I was wrapping up my evening, scrolling through Netflix trying to find something decent to watch, when she walked through the front door with that particular smile. You know the one. The smile that says someone's about to drop a bombshell, and they think they're being clever about it. She set her purse down, kicked off her heels, and started with the classic opener. So, I have some news about the party this weekend. The party. Her birthday celebration that she'd been planning for weeks like it was some kind of state dinner. I'd already mentally prepared myself for whatever drama was coming, but nothing could have prepared me for what came next. I invited someone else today. She paused, clearly waiting for me to ask who. When I didn't bite, she continued anyway. My ex is going to be there. I looked up from my phone. Your ex what now? You remember him. He's going through a rough patch right now. His mom mentioned it when I ran into her at Target this afternoon. Poor guy just needs some friends around him, you know? Just to cheer him up a bit. There it was. The setup. The elaborate justification for something that had absolutely nothing to do with charity or friendship. I could feel my blood pressure rising, but I kept my voice steady. Let me get this straight. You ran into his mother at Target, had a whole conversation about her son's emotional well-being, and decided the best way to help him was to invite him to your birthday party. She shifted uncomfortably, but doubled down. It's not like that. We're all adults here. Besides, it would be weird to not invite him when his mom specifically mentioned he could use some social interaction. Weird for who exactly? Because I'm pretty sure most people would find it weird to invite your ex-boyfriend to a party your husband is throwing for you. Oh, come on. You're being dramatic. It's just one person, and he's practically family anyway. We dated for what? 8 months? That was years ago. 8 months. She said it like it was a casual weekend fling instead of nearly a year of her life with another man. And practically family. That was a new one. I stood up and faced her directly. You're telling me you still have enough contact with this guy's mother to run into her at Target and have heart-to-heart conversations about her son's mental health? It wasn't a heart-to-heart. We just talked for like 5 minutes in the cereal aisle. The cereal aisle. I repeated it back to her, letting the absurdity hang in the air. And in those 5 minutes, you learned enough about his personal struggles to decide he needed an invitation to your birthday party. Her defensive walls were going up fast. Look, I already invited him, okay? I can't uninvite him now. That would be incredibly rude. But inviting him in the first place wasn't rude to me. You're making this into something it's not. I need you to just act normal about this. Can you do that for me? Can you just be mature about it? Act normal. Be mature. The classic manipulation tactics wrapped up in reasonable-sounding requests. She wanted me to smile and play along while she paraded her ex-boyfriend around our friends like some kind of charity case. I looked at her for a long moment, watching as she tried to read my expression. She was expecting another argument, maybe some yelling, definitely more pushback. Instead, I felt something shift inside me. Not anger exactly, but something colder and far more focused. You know what? You're absolutely right. Her eyebrows shot up. I am. Yeah, we should definitely invite him. In fact, I think it's a great idea to have him there. She blinked a few times, clearly not expecting this response. Really? Absolutely. If he's going through a tough time, then the party is exactly what he needs. Good friends, good food, good company. I'm sure it'll be very therapeutic for him. The relief on her face was almost comical. I'm so glad you understand. I was worried you'd make this into a big deal. No big deal at all. Actually, now that I think about it, maybe we should make sure he has the support he needs. You know how these things go. Sometimes people going through rough patches need their whole support system around them. What do you mean? Well, if he's struggling, he probably needs his girlfriend there too, right? For emotional support. Her face went pale. His girlfriend? Sure. I mean, if we're inviting him for his mental health, we should make sure his significant other is there to help him through whatever he's dealing with. That's what caring friends would do. She was quiet for several seconds. She was trying to find words that wouldn't come. I don't think that's necessary, she finally managed. Why not? If this is really about helping him through a difficult time, then having his girlfriend there would be the compassionate thing to do. Unless there's some reason you think she shouldn't be there. I just think it might make things complicated. Complicated how? She couldn't answer that question without revealing exactly why having his girlfriend there would be a problem. And we both knew it. I smiled at her, the same kind of smile she'd walked in with. Don't worry about it. I'll take care of the details. You just focus on enjoying your special day. The next morning, while she was at work, I started my research. It didn't take long to find him on social media. People these days share everything online, and he was no exception. 3 months ago, he'd posted a picture with a woman at some restaurant downtown. The caption read, "Date night with this beautiful woman." 2 months ago, another picture of them hiking together. "Adventures with my favorite person." But the most recent post was the jackpot. Just 2 weeks ago, a picture of the two of them at what looked like a family gathering. His arm around her, both of them smiling at the camera. The caption was simple but telling. 1 year with this amazing woman. Here's to many more. Her name was Zoe, and based on her own social media presence, she was sharp, successful, and definitely not the type of woman who would appreciate being kept in the dark about her boyfriend's extracurricular activities. I sat back in my chair, looking at the photos on my screen. My wife thought she was being clever, manipulating the situation to get what she wanted while making me look like the unreasonable one if I objected. What she didn't realize was that she'd just handed me the perfect opportunity to turn her birthday party into something far more memorable than she'd ever planned. Time to make some phone calls. The next few days turned me into a detective, and honestly, I was getting pretty good at it. While my wife busied herself with party preparations, ordering decorations from Amazon, and calling the catering company for the third time, I was conducting my own investigation. His name was Ryan, and he worked at a tech company about 20 minutes from downtown. Single guy, lived in a decent apartment complex on the east side. But the most interesting discovery was his relationship status with Zoe. They'd been together for over a year, and from what I could piece together through their social media, they were serious about each other. Zoe worked in marketing for a mid-sized firm and had the kind of online presence that screamed confidence and intelligence. Her posts were witty, her comments sharp, and she definitely wasn't the type to tolerate nonsense from anyone. Perfect. But the real education came from watching my wife's behavior over those few days. Suddenly, she was taking phone calls in the bathroom. Her phone was face down on every surface, and she developed this habit of checking her messages while pretending to read something else. Tuesday evening, I was making dinner when her phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. The preview showed just enough. "Can't wait to see you this weekend." When she came back from her shower, I mentioned it casually. "Your phone was buzzing. Looked like someone's excited about the party." She grabbed it quickly, glanced at the screen, and her cheeks actually flushed. "Oh, that's just my cousin. She's driving down from Portland for the party." Her cousin lived in Seattle, had for the past 5 years. Wednesday morning, she announced she was going shopping for a new outfit for the party. She left at 10 and came back at 4 with exactly one small bag from Victoria's Secret. Either she'd spent 6 hours picking out underwear, or she'd made a detour that had nothing to do with shopping. "Find everything you needed?" I asked when she walked in. "Just some things for the party," she said, heading straight upstairs without showing me what she'd bought. That evening, while she was in the shower, I decided to do a little more research. Her laptop was still logged into her email, and while I'm not proud of snooping, sometimes you need to confirm what you already know. The email thread was right there in her sent folder. Not with Ryan directly, but with an account I didn't recognize. The subject line was innocent enough, party details, but the content was anything but. "Can't wait to see you again. It feels like it's been forever since Tuesday." Tuesday, the day she'd supposedly been shopping for 6 hours. "I know it's risky having you at the party, but I've been thinking about you constantly. He doesn't suspect anything." He, that would be me, apparently. "Just act natural, and everything will be fine. We can figure out what to do after the party." Figure out what to do. That sounded ominous. I closed the laptop and sat back, processing what I just read. This wasn't just about inviting an ex to a party. This was a full-blown affair that had been going on for months, and my wife was using her own birthday celebration as some kind of twisted date night. The next morning, Thursday, I made my decision. I found Zoe's work email through her company's website and crafted a message that was direct but not accusatory. "Hi Zoe, I know this is going to sound strange, but I think we need to talk. My name is protagonist name, and I believe your boyfriend Ryan knows my wife. I have some concerns about their relationship that I think you should be aware of. Would you be willing to meet for coffee? I can explain everything in person." I sent it around 10 in the morning and didn't expect a response until later. Instead, my phone rang 30 minutes later. "Is this about Ryan and some married woman?" Her voice was crisp, professional, but with an edge that suggested she'd already been suspicious. "You could say that. I can meet you today. There's a Starbucks on 5th Street downtown. How's noon? I'll be there." I arrived early and spotted her immediately. She looked exactly like her photos, professional but approachable, with an expression that suggested she was ready for whatever conversation we were about to have. "So," she said, sitting down across from me with her coffee, "tell me about your wife and my boyfriend." I laid out everything. The sudden invitation to the party, the inconsistencies in her story, the secretive behavior, and finally, the emails I'd found. Zoe listened without interrupting, her expression growing darker with each detail. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment, staring into her coffee cup. "Son of a bitch," she said finally. "I knew something was wrong." "You suspected?" "For about 2 months now. He's been distant, making excuses to go out, and he's been way too interested in helping some friend who was having marriage problems. He claimed it was just a guy from work, but I could never get a straight answer about who it was." She pulled out her phone and scrolled through some messages. "Look at this. Tuesday, he told me he had to work late on a project. Wednesday, he said he was helping a friend move furniture. Thursday, he was supposedly at his cousin's house fixing their computer. Tuesday was when my wife went shopping for 6 hours. And Wednesday was when she sent that email about missing him since Tuesday." We looked at each other across the table, two people who'd just confirmed their worst suspicions. "So what do you want to do about it?" she asked. There was something about the way she said it, with a slight smile that didn't reach her eyes, that told me Zoe was not the kind of woman who would quietly accept being betrayed. "Well," I said, matching her tone, "I did promise my wife that Ryan would have his whole support system at the party, including his girlfriend." Her smile got wider and significantly more dangerous. "I do love a good party," she said, "especially surprise parties." We spent the next hour planning. Zoe would show up halfway through the event, after Ryan had already arrived and gotten comfortable. She'd play it like she was surprising him with an appearance, giving them no time to coordinate their story or warn each other. "The key is timing," she explained. "We want them relaxed and off guard. Once they think they've gotten away with it, that's when we strike." As we prepared to leave, Zoe extended her hand for a professional handshake, but there was nothing professional about the look in her eyes. "This is going to be fun," she said. Walking back to my car, I realized that my wife had made a critical error in judgment. She thought she was dealing with a husband who would simply accept her manipulation and play along with her charade. What she was actually dealing with was a man who'd just found the perfect partner for the kind of justice she'd never see coming. Friday night, she spent 2 hours getting ready for her own party, trying on different outfits and asking my opinion on her makeup. She was glowing with excitement, probably thinking about seeing Ryan in a few hours. "You seem happy," I observed, watching her apply lipstick in the bedroom mirror. "I just love parties. And I'm so glad you're being mature about everything." Mature. If she only knew. "Don't worry," I told her. "Tomorrow's going to be a birthday you'll never forget." Saturday morning arrived with my wife practically bouncing off the walls with excitement. She was up at 7, despite the party not starting until 6, making phone calls to confirm deliveries and rearranging furniture for the third time. "The flowers should be here by noon," she announced, checking items off her list. And the caterer confirmed they'll set up at 4. I watched her bustling around, knowing that a significant portion of her enthusiasm had nothing to do with celebrating another year of life and everything to do with seeing Ryan in a few hours. Around 10, my phone buzzed with a text from Zoe. "Did some investigating of my own last night. Found some interesting things. Can we meet before the party?" I told my wife I needed to run a few errands and would be back to help with setup. She barely looked up from her checklist, waving me away absently. Zoe was waiting at the same Starbucks, but this time she had a folder with her. She looked like a prosecutor about to present evidence to a jury. "So, I spent yesterday evening going through Ryan's stuff while he was supposedly at his gym," she began, opening the folder. "Turns out he's been busier than I thought." She spread out printed screenshots across the table. Hotel receipts from his credit card statements. Uber rides to locations that made no sense for his supposed work schedule. And most damning of all, a series of photos from his phone that he'd forgotten to delete from his cloud storage. "This one's from 3 weeks ago." She pointed to a picture of Ryan and my wife sitting together in what looked like a restaurant booth, her hand covering his across the table. "And this one's from last month." The second photo showed them walking together through some downtown shopping area, his arm around her waist in a gesture that was definitely not friendly. "How long have you known him?" I asked. 14 months. We met through mutual friends, started dating seriously about a year ago. I actually thought we were heading towards something permanent. Her voice had an edge to it that suggested Ryan was about to learn exactly how permanent his current situation was about to become. What changed your mind? About 2 months ago, he started talking about this friend at work who was having marriage troubles. Said the guy needed advice about whether to stay with his wife or leave her. Except every time I asked questions about this friend, Ryan's story kept changing. First it was a coworker, then it was a college buddy, then it was someone from his old job. She pulled out another sheet of paper. Then last week, I caught him on a phone call that he ended real quick when I walked into the room. He claimed it was his mom, but I heard him say, "I can't wait to see you," right before he hung up. His mom lives in Florida, and they talk maybe once a month. And you didn't confront him? I was planning to, but then you contacted me and everything suddenly made sense. The friend with marriage problems wasn't a friend at all. It was his married girlfriend asking for advice about her husband. Zoe leaned back in her chair, and I could see the wheels turning behind her eyes. You know what really gets me? He's been using me as a relationship counselor for his affair, asking me what I thought about people who stay in unhappy marriages, whether I believed in second chances, if I thought some relationships were worth fighting for even when they seemed hopeless. Sounds like he was trying to figure out your wife's mindset through you. Exactly. And I was actually giving him thoughtful advice, thinking I was helping some poor guy navigate a difficult situation. Meanwhile, I was basically coaching him on how to steal someone's wife. The fury in her voice was controlled but unmistakable. This wasn't just about catching a cheating boyfriend. This was about being manipulated and used as an unwitting accomplice in her own betrayal. "So what's your plan for tonight?" she asked. "Show up about an hour into the party. I'll make sure Ryan's comfortable and off guard by then. You arrive as a surprise, and we see how they react when their worlds collide. I like it, but I think we can do better than that." She leaned forward, her expression shifting into something that reminded me of a general planning a military campaign. What if we let them dig themselves deeper first? How do you mean? Think about it. Right now, they probably think they're being clever. Ryan shows up, acts like an old friend. They steal a few moments together, maybe make plans to meet up later. They get comfortable with the lie. And then I arrive and catch them in the act. Not just being at the same party, but actually being together. Talking, laughing, maybe even touching. If we time it right, we can catch them behaving like a couple in front of all your friends. I had to admit, her strategic thinking was impressive. Most people would want to confront the situation immediately, but Zoe was playing chess while our partners were playing checkers. You really want to humiliate them. I want justice. There's a difference. She gathered up the photos and papers. Besides, they've been humiliating us for months. Turnabout seems fair. We spent another hour refining the plan. I would text her updates throughout the party, letting her know when Ryan arrived and how he and my wife were interacting. She would show up when the moment was right for maximum impact. "One more thing," she said as we prepared to leave. "After tonight, what happens between us?" "What do you mean?" "I mean, we're about to blow up both of our relationships in a very public way. Are we going to be okay with each other afterward? Or is this just a one-time alliance?" It was a fair question. We were essentially strangers brought together by betrayal, but working with her felt surprisingly natural. She was smart, direct, and had a sense of humor that came through even when discussing relationship destruction. "I think we'll be fine," I said. "You seem like good people to have around in a crisis. You're not bad yourself." Most guys would have either confronted their wife immediately or just quietly filed for divorce. This approach takes patience and strategy, and a really good partner. She smiled at that, the first genuinely warm expression I'd seen from her. "See you tonight. And don't worry about anything. I've got this handled." Driving home, I reflected on how the situation had evolved. Yesterday, I was a husband dealing with a cheating wife. Today, I was part of a team with someone who understood exactly what was at stake. My wife was waiting when I got back, wearing a new dress and looking radiant with anticipation. "Where did you go?" "You were gone for 2 hours. Just picking up a few things for tonight. Making sure everything goes perfectly. You're being so sweet about this whole thing. I know it was awkward when I first mentioned Ryan coming, but I really appreciate you being understanding." Understanding. That was one way to put it. Don't worry about it. Tonight's going to be perfect. Everyone who should be there will be there. She hugged me, genuinely grateful for what she thought was my acceptance of her manipulation. "I love you," she said. "Tonight's going to show everyone exactly where we stand," I replied. She took that as a romantic declaration. I meant it as a promise. By 5:30, the house was transformed. Flowers everywhere, catered food set up in the dining room, and an impressive cake from the expensive bakery downtown. My wife had spared no expense for what she probably thought would be a celebration of successfully managing her secret relationship. The first guests started arriving at 6, and by 6:30, the house was full of friends and family. My wife was in her element, playing hostess and accepting birthday wishes while constantly checking the door for one particular arrival. At 7:15, Ryan walked in. I watched my wife's face light up when she saw him, and I watched her immediately compose herself and shift into actress mode. She greeted him like an old friend, introducing him around as someone I've known forever and practically family. Ryan played his part well too, acting appropriately grateful for the invitation and making conversation with the other guests. But I noticed the way he and my wife kept gravitating toward each other throughout the room, and how they found excuses to talk privately in corners. At 8 o'clock, I sent Zoe a text. He's here. They're being careful but definitely drawn to each other. Her response was immediate. Perfect. Give me 20 more minutes. By 8:20, Ryan and my wife had migrated to the kitchen under the pretense of getting more ice. Through the doorway, I could see them standing closer together than friends would, her hand briefly touching his arm as she laughed at something he said. That's when I sent the second text. Kitchen. Now would be perfect. The doorbell rang 3 minutes later. I answered it myself, loud enough for the whole party to hear. Zoe, what a surprise. Come on in. Everyone's going to love meeting you. The 24 hours between my meeting with Zoe and the party were like watching a masterclass in deception. My wife transformed into someone I barely recognized, putting on a performance that would have impressed Broadway directors. Friday night, she spent an hour on what she claimed was a work call, speaking in hushed tones from the bedroom. When I walked in, she quickly wrapped up with, "Okay, we'll discuss the project details on Monday." Except it was past 9 p.m. on a Friday, and her company wasn't exactly known for weekend work emergencies. Saturday morning brought even more interesting developments. While she was in the shower, her phone buzzed with notifications. I glanced over and saw preview messages from someone named Ashley. Funny thing was, I knew all her friends, and there was no Ashley in her circle. The messages were perfectly innocent if you didn't know better. Excited for tonight, and see you soon. But the timing was suspicious, coming right after Ryan would have confirmed his attendance. Who's Ashley? I asked when she came downstairs. Ashley? Oh, she's a new friend from my yoga class. She might stop by tonight if she gets off work early. Another lie, smoothly delivered with just the right amount of casual disinterest. I was starting to understand why she thought she could pull this whole thing off. She was actually pretty good at it. Around noon, Zoe texted me with an update. Checked his location this morning. He went to the mall and spent 2 hours at Men's Warehouse. Someone's shopping for a special occasion. The image of Ryan carefully selecting an outfit to impress my wife at her birthday party was almost comical. The guy was treating this like a legitimate date, probably thinking he was being romantic. Found something else. Zoe's next message read, followed by a screenshot. He posted on his Instagram story about exciting plans tonight, with a picture of cologne and dress shirts laid out on his bed. I showed the screenshot to my wife when she wasn't paying attention. Hey, look at this guy's Instagram story. Seems like he's got big plans tonight. She glanced at the phone and her cheeks flushed slightly. Oh, that's nice. He probably has a date or something. A date. That was technically accurate. By afternoon, the house was chaos in the best way possible. Caterers setting up tables, flower deliverers arranging centerpieces, and my wife orchestrating everything like a conductor leading a symphony. But I noticed she kept checking her phone and would disappear to make calls about party details. Around 3, I excused myself to run errands and met Zoe at a coffee shop near her apartment. Ready for tonight? She asked, but there was something different about her demeanor. She seemed more focused, almost predatory. Ready as I'll ever be. You. I spent last night researching your wife online. Social media, work profile, everything I could find. She pulled out her phone. She seems like the type who really cares about appearances and what people think of her. That's accurate. Good. Because what I'm planning tonight is going to destroy that carefully crafted image she's built. There was something in her tone that made me pay closer attention. What exactly are you planning? Well, originally I was just going to show up and confront them. But then I realized that's not nearly enough. They've been lying to us for months, using us, making us look like fools. A simple confrontation lets them off too easy. She leaned forward, her eyes bright with purpose. I want everyone at that party to know exactly what kind of people they are. I want your friends to see what your wife really is, and I want Ryan to understand that actions have consequences. And how do you plan to do that? By giving them enough rope to hang themselves. Let them get comfortable. Let them think they're getting away with it. And then expose them in a way that leaves no room for excuses or explanations. I had to admire her thoroughness. This wasn't just about catching cheaters. This was about ensuring they faced real consequences for their choices. There's something else, she continued. I printed out some of those photos and emails. If they try to deny anything or claim it's all a misunderstanding, I'll have evidence to back up everything. She showed me a folder containing printouts of the hotel receipts, the photos from Ryan's phone, and screenshots of his location data from the past few weeks. It was like a prosecutor's case file. You've been busy. I don't like being lied to, and I really don't like being made to look stupid. Ryan's about to learn that I'm not the kind of woman you mess with. We went over the timing one more time. She would arrive around 8:30, after Ryan had been there long enough to relax and let his guard down. I would introduce her to everyone as Ryan's girlfriend, making it clear that this was supposed to be a surprise for him. The key is watching their faces when I walk in, Zoe explained. Guilty people always give themselves away in that first moment of panic. And then what? Then I see how far they're willing to dig themselves in before I bury them. By the time I got home, the transformation was complete. Our house looked like something out of a magazine, and my wife was radiant in her new dress, putting finishing touches on her makeup. Everything looks perfect. I told her, and I meant it. She had created the ideal setting for her own downfall. I'm so excited, she said, checking her reflection one more time. I just want everything to go smoothly. Don't worry. Tonight's going to be exactly what everyone deserves. The first guests arrived right on time, and within an hour, the house was full of laughter and conversation. My wife was in her element, graciously accepting birthday wishes and making sure everyone had drinks and food. But I could see her checking the door every few minutes, waiting for her real guest of honor to arrive. At 7:15, Ryan walked in wearing a crisp button-down shirt and slacks that definitely came from his Men's Warehouse shopping trip. He brought flowers and a birthday card, playing the part of the thoughtful family friend perfectly. Ryan, my wife exclaimed, her voice carrying just a little too much enthusiasm. I'm so glad you could make it. Wouldn't miss it, he replied, handing over the flowers with a smile that lingered a bit too long. I watched the interaction from across the room, noting how they both seemed to light up in each other's presence. But more importantly, I watched how they immediately started gravitating toward each other as the evening progressed. Within 30 minutes, they had found excuses to step away from the main group twice. First to get more wine from the kitchen, then to show him the renovations we'd done to the back patio. Each time, they were gone just long enough to have private conversations, but not long enough to be obviously absent. By 8 o'clock, they were getting careless. I spotted them standing together by the sliding door to the backyard, her hand on his arm as she laughed at something he was saying. To anyone watching closely, they looked like a couple having an intimate moment. That's when I sent Zoe the text. Perfect timing. They're getting comfortable. Her response was immediate. On my way. This is going to be fun. I spent the next 15 minutes watching my wife and Ryan continue their careful dance around each other. They would separate to talk to other guests, but always ended up back together within a few minutes. My wife was glowing with happiness, probably thinking she was successfully managing an impossible situation. Ryan seemed equally pleased with himself, chatting easily with our friends and accepting their compliments on what a thoughtful guy he was for coming to support an old friend. Neither of them had any idea that their perfectly planned evening was about to become a nightmare they'd never forget. At 8:28, the doorbell rang. I excused myself from a conversation about weekend plans and walked to the front door, knowing that everything was about to change. Showtime, I said under my breath, and opened the door to let Justice walk in. I opened the door, and there stood Zoe, looking stunning in a black dress that screamed confidence and purpose. She had clearly dressed for the occasion, but not in the way my wife had. While my wife had dressed to impress Ryan, Zoe had dressed for war. Zoe, I said loudly enough for the entire party to hear. What a wonderful surprise. Everyone, come meet Ryan's girlfriend. The effect was immediate and devastating. From across the room, I could see Ryan's face drain of color. My wife, who had been laughing at something he'd just said, suddenly looked like she'd been struck by lightning. But Zoe was magnificent. I hope you don't mind me crashing the party, she said with a brilliant smile, stepping into the house like she owned it. When Ryan mentioned he was coming to celebrate an old friend's birthday, I just had to meet the woman who's been so important to him. The words were perfectly innocent, but her tone carried just enough edge that anyone paying attention would know something was off. My wife recovered first, her years of social conditioning kicking in. Of course not. The more the merrier. I'm so glad to finally meet you. Likewise, Zoe replied, moving through the crowd toward Ryan like a guided missile. Ryan's told me so much about you. Haven't you, sweetheart? Ryan looked like he was about to throw up. Ah, yes. I mentioned. He's been talking about this party for weeks, Zoe continued, reaching Ryan and sliding her arm through his in a gesture that was both affectionate and possessive. Haven't you, honey? You were so excited about seeing everyone again. The conversation around them had quieted as people sensed the tension building. My wife stood frozen, clearly trying to figure out how to navigate this unexpected development. Well, my wife said finally, Ryan and I go way back. We've known each other for years. Oh yes, he's mentioned that, Zoe said, her smile never wavering. In fact, he talks about you quite often, especially lately. Ryan tried to steer the conversation to safer territory. Zoe, maybe we should get some drinks and mingle with everyone else. Actually, I'd love to hear more about your friendship, Zoe said, ignoring his attempt to escape. Ryan's been so concerned about your marriage troubles. He's such a caring person, always wanting to help people work through their problems. My wife's face went pale. Marriage troubles? Oh, didn't he tell you he'd been sharing your situation with me? He's been asking my advice about what you should do, about whether some marriages are worth saving or if people should just move on to find happiness elsewhere. The silence that followed was deafening. Everyone within earshot was now openly watching the conversation, sensing that something significant was happening, but not quite understanding what. I think there's been some misunderstanding, my wife said weakly. Has there? Zoe's voice was silk wrapped around steel. Because Ryan's been very clear about your situation. Haven't you, Ryan? All those late-night phone calls where you've been discussing her problems. Ryan was sweating now. Zoe, I think maybe we should step outside and talk privately. Why privately? These are your friends, aren't they? I'm sure they'd understand that you've been helping a friend through a difficult time. She turned to address the growing audience. Ryan's been such a supportive friend to your hostess here, meeting with her regularly to discuss her marriage, taking her calls at all hours, even spending afternoons together helping her work through her feelings. The room was dead quiet now. Everyone understood that they were witnessing something explosive, even if they didn't have all the details yet. My wife made a desperate attempt to regain control. I think there's been some confusion about. Confusion? Zoe's voice rose just slightly, enough to ensure everyone could hear. Let me clear up the confusion then. She reached into her purse and pulled out her phone, scrolling to something she'd prepared. Ryan, would you like to explain to everyone why you told me last Tuesday that you were working late when you were actually at the Riverside restaurant with our birthday girl here? She held up her phone, showing a photo of Ryan and my wife sitting together in a restaurant booth, looking very much like a couple on a date. The gasps from the party guests were audible. Or maybe you'd like to explain why you've been paying for hotel rooms downtown every Thursday afternoon for the past 2 months? Another photo appeared on her phone screen, a hotel receipt clearly showing Ryan's name and credit card information. My wife tried one last desperate play. This is ridiculous. Today is my birthday, and I don't know what kind of game you're playing, but I want you to leave. Right now. That's when Zoe's mask finally came off completely. Game? She said, her voice cutting through the party noise like a blade. You think this is a game? You've been sleeping with my boyfriend for months, lying to your husband, and you want to talk about games. She turned to Ryan, who was backing away like a trapped animal. And you pathetic excuse for a man. Did you really think I wouldn't figure it out? Did you think you could keep me around as your relationship counselor while you destroyed someone else's marriage? Zoe, please, let me explain. Explain what? How you've been telling me you love me while screwing a married woman behind my back. How you've been using me for advice on how to steal someone's wife. The party had come to a complete standstill. Every guest was watching the scene unfold, their faces showing shock, fascination, and horror in equal measure. My wife made one final attempt to salvage the situation. Everyone, please, this woman is obviously unstable. Security should remove her from my home immediately. Your home. Zoe laughed, but it wasn't a pleasant sound. Honey, after tonight, you might want to start looking for a new place to live. She turned to address the crowd. Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for interrupting this lovely party, but I thought you should know what kind of people you're celebrating. Your hostess here has been having an affair with my boyfriend for months, lying to her husband and making a fool of everyone who trusted her. Then she looked directly at my wife with pure venom in her eyes. But don't worry about your special day being ruined. I'm going to give you a birthday present you'll never forget. Before anyone could react, Zoe grabbed my wife by the hair and shoved her face directly into the elaborate birthday cake. The sound my wife made was somewhere between a scream and a gurgle as her face disappeared into buttercream frosting and chocolate ganache. When she came up gasping, her perfect makeup was replaced by cake and her hair was dripping with icing. Happy birthday, you cheating piece of trash, Zoe said calmly. The room erupted in shocked voices and nervous laughter. Some people rushed forward to help my wife. Others pulled out their phones to record the aftermath, and more than a few guests were openly staring in amazement at what they'd just witnessed. Ryan tried to rush toward Zoe, whether to attack her or restrain her, I couldn't tell. But she turned on him before he could reach her. And you, she said, pointing a finger in his face. We're done. Pack your stuff and get it out of my apartment by tomorrow, or I'll throw it all in the dumpster. Zoe, wait, let me explain. Explain to someone who cares. I'm done listening to your lies. She turned to leave, then paused and looked back at my wife, who was standing there covered in cake, trying to wipe frosting out of her eyes. Oh, and honey, next time you want to steal someone's boyfriend, you might want to make sure his girlfriend isn't smarter than you are. With that, she walked toward the door. But before she reached it, she turned back to me. I think it's time you took control of this situation, she said with a meaningful look. That was my cue. While everyone was still in shock from the cake incident, I walked to the center of the room and pulled a manila envelope from the table where the gifts were displayed. Since we're sharing news tonight, I announced loudly enough for everyone to hear. I might as well share mine. I opened the envelope and pulled out the divorce papers I'd had drawn up earlier in the week. These are divorce papers, I said, holding them up for everyone to see. Turns out my wife's affair with Ryan has been going on for months, and tonight seemed like the perfect time to let everyone know that this marriage is over. I walked over to my wife, who was still trying to clean cake out of her hair, and handed her the papers. Consider this your real birthday present, I said. Your freedom to be with whoever you want, whenever you want, without having to lie about it anymore. The silence in the room was absolute. Everyone stared as my wife took the papers with shaking, frosting-covered hands. You can't be serious, she whispered. Dead serious. And since tonight was supposed to be about celebrating you, I figured all our friends should know exactly what kind of person they've been celebrating. I turned to address the room full of shocked guests. Thank you all for coming tonight. I'm sorry the party didn't turn out the way anyone expected, but sometimes the truth has a way of coming out at the most inconvenient times. That's when Zoe appeared at my side again. Come on, she said, taking my arm. I think our work here is done. And with that, she led me toward the door, leaving my soon-to-be ex-wife standing in the middle of her ruined party, covered in birthday cake, holding divorce papers, while our friends and family stared in stunned silence. Walking out of that house with Zoe felt like stepping into a completely different world. Behind us, we could hear the chaos continuing, my wife crying, guests arguing about what they'd just witnessed, and Ryan trying unsuccessfully to explain himself to anyone who would listen. That went better than I expected, Zoe said as we reached the sidewalk. Better? You nearly started a riot in there. Sometimes people need to see the truth in living color. Your wife spent months lying to everyone who cared about her. She deserved to have her real character exposed. We stood by her car for a moment, both of us processing what had just happened. The adrenaline was wearing off, and reality was setting in. So what happens now? I asked. Now? Now they both get to deal with the consequences of their choices. Ryan's going to find out that cheating on the wrong woman can destroy a lot more than just a relationship. And my wife, your ex-wife, you mean, she's going to discover that actions have consequences, and that not everyone is willing to quietly accept being betrayed. 3 months later, the fallout was everything we could have hoped for and more. My wife had tried to salvage her reputation by claiming she was the victim of a setup, but too many people had seen the evidence Zoe presented that night. The photos, the hotel receipts, the timeline of lies. It all painted a picture that was impossible to deny. Ryan hadn't fared much better. Word of his affair spread through his social circle, and apparently, several mutual friends had decided that someone willing to help destroy a marriage wasn't the kind of person they wanted in their lives. As for Zoe and me, what started as a partnership for justice had evolved into something neither of us had expected. We'd spent weeks after the party processing everything that had happened, meeting for coffee to discuss the divorce proceedings and Ryan's pathetic attempts to win her back. "You know," she said one evening as we sat in her apartment, "I never thanked you properly for giving me the chance to expose them." "You never thanked me? You handed me the most satisfying moment of my entire marriage. I should be thanking you. We make a good team." She was right. We did make a good team. In the months since the party, we discovered that our partnership extended far beyond revenge. We shared the same sense of humor, the same appreciation for directness over manipulation, and the same refusal to accept being treated poorly. "So," she said, "what do we do now?" "Well, my divorce will be final next month. Ryan's officially out of your life. We've both learned that we're pretty good at reading people and planning strategies. And I was thinking that maybe it's time we started planning something positive instead of destructive." 6 months after the birthday party disaster, Zoe and I were planning our first vacation together. It wasn't a romantic getaway exactly, but it wasn't just friendship either. We were taking our time, building something real based on trust and respect rather than deception and manipulation. My ex-wife had moved out of town, apparently unable to handle the social consequences of her choices. Ryan had tried multiple times to contact both Zoe and me, alternately apologizing and blaming us for overreacting to what he called a complicated situation. Neither of us had responded to any of his messages. "Do you ever regret how we handled everything?" Zoe asked one evening. "Do you mean do I regret exposing two people who were lying to us and making us look like fools?" "Not for a second. Even the cake thing, especially the cake thing, that was pure artistry. I did feel a little bad about ruining the cake. It looked expensive. Consider it a small price to pay for justice. The truth was, I'd never felt better about anything in my life. For years, I'd been married to someone who saw me as an obstacle to what she really wanted rather than a partner she respected. I'd been planning a future with someone who was secretly planning her exit strategy. Now I was building something with someone who had proven that when things got difficult, she didn't run or lie or manipulate. She fought back with intelligence and strength. "You know what I realized?" Zoe said. "What's that?" "They actually did us a favor. If Ryan hadn't been stupid enough to get caught, I might have wasted years with someone who didn't respect me. Same with your wife. So we should send them thank you cards? Let's not get crazy." As I looked across the table at her, I realized that sometimes the best things in life come from the worst situations. My marriage had been a lie, but its destruction had led me to someone who was absolutely genuine. And that felt like the kind of justice that goes beyond revenge. It was actually building something better from the wreckage of something false. "Here's to new beginnings," I said, raising my coffee cup. "And to people who are exactly who they appear to be," she replied. "Perfect.